Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the One Journey podcast. Week 2, I'm excited about week 2. We're going to talk about what is it to be on a human journey. Last week, we talked about a transformation journey, which by nature of being on a transformation journey, it's a human journey, but we actually want to really talk about that because it's so important. I feel like I've fought my humanity my whole life, and I'm just learning to embrace it in so many different ways. And so we want to have that bigger conversation today. You can find us and connect with us on theonejourney.com. You can find John at johnwalt.com. And we love the conversation. We'd love to hear from you. Send us your questions, send us your thoughts. We really want to be in dialogue with more people than just us, but we're also really happy just to talk and record it. So join us in that dialogue. Also at theonejourney.com, you can sign up for our weekly emails where there's writing and practices and connection with God. And then there's also a link that you can get to join us on our Zoom calls. We do a practice session every week on Monday and Tuesday, noon Central to 1. We start on time, we end on time. You don't even have to share. You can just listen and say hi and then go off screen if you want to. But it's a way to practice some of these things and join the conversation as well. So we would love to have you. Please join us. Okay, today, I'm really excited to talk about what it is to be a human, the human paradigm, the human condition. Why is it important to talk about being a human would be my first question to you guys. Why is it important to talk about humanity when we're talking about the importance and looking at the importance of transformation journeys? So, John, thoughts on why we would need to have this conversation?
Yeah, honestly, I think this is the most important conversation that anybody can have because it's not, I'm going to say it's at the core of what it means to be human, but without explaining that won't make sense. So, we have this concept in the Christian world of sinner, and we have this like cultural understanding of what is a sinner, which is great, but it really holds us back.
Sometimes
It's not great. Because what it does is our binary thinking. We say sinner means bad.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a bad person. What does a bad person need to do? They need to be good. So we try to flip the switch from bad to good. How do you flip a switch from bad to good when you're talking about a person's life? Behavior modification. People go and they change their actions. And what happens then is they really have just reconstructed their false narrative about themselves, but it is still the false narrative. And so it's still not who they truly are. So we need freedom from the false self, which when we look at what the false self is, it's really just apart from God, we have a tendency because of the way our brains are built to focus on ourselves. That serves us really well when we're younger. And honestly, like in so many ways, it serves us well to pay attention to what we need, but it's not the way that we were created to live. And so the problem is we spend so many years focused on getting what we want and taking care of what we need. And then we end up subconsciously creating this false identity for ourselves. It's interesting that basically every culture and civilization prior to ours, our modern Western civilization, our globally connected world now, has understood that a person is born and then at some point in time they have to go through a transformation, and there's so many layers of transformation. So we will go into all that at some point, but on a high level, it's like the boy, the young man, the young girl is focused on themselves, and the transformation that they have to go through is to step out of self-focus and into playing their role in the larger community. In tribal cultures and stuff, this was way easier concept to see played out, but essentially, and it was a very spiritual thing. I'm not going to say, and I just want to be clear, like lots of transformation journeys throughout history were not necessarily right, but there was this understanding that everyone had of, I need to go through a dying. I need to let go of the false person who I think I am, and I need to step into who I actually am. I need to play my role. And part of that is because, to make it really simple, like our brains are wired to focus on us, and they're focused on giving us what we think we want and need. And this self-protection mechanism really keeps us from being able to find freedom, because self-obsession, and we see this all the time. Like, you can see people that live lives that are self-obsessed, and you go, wow, we really create our own hell for ourselves. That's really all we do. So what we need is freedom from the way that our brain leads us on its own. Like, we have to take control of our minds, and we have to step into freedom. So it's not all mental, just to be clear. It's a very much a spiritual, a mental, and a practical transformation here. But so part of being human is to recognize that there is this brain that we were given that helps us, but it also traps us. And in order for us to find freedom, we have to step out of that, and we have to step into a true identity that we were actually created for, that is not self-absorbed. And so that's where the dying process is. Dying is we let go of all the stuff that we hold so tightly to.
I like the way you describe it that way, because for me, coming from some of that life model perspective about maturity, it's such an essential thing that we are selfish at a young age in order to learn to care for ourselves. Because if we don't learn that, now I'm dependent on you and you and you to pick up all the pieces for me forever. And that's a drain. Rather than those really formative years where we learn that we're safe, and then we learn how to get our own needs met with support, and then we learn and grow capacity for being of service to the community. And I know that's that transition is a big piece of the journey, transitioning into parenthood, transitioning into service of our neighbor, transitioning into leadership in a community. You cannot get there in a healthy way if you did not learn to care for yourself and learn that you're safe in a community. And many of us missed some of that formation. So the transformation journey also helps us go back and pick up pieces that we missed. But it's super important around our identity. You just described that really well. But our understanding of what it is to be a human is all wrapped up in there. And so, Anne-Marie, what are your thoughts on knowing that we're talking about the one journey, the one human journey? Why is it so important for us today to have a conversation about humanity?
Well, I think in part, especially those of us who have been very shaped by our religious beliefs, we just shove our humanity to the side and basically say, I need to live this way. I need to do these things right. I need to behave in a certain way, make these kinds of choices. And we judge our humanity as something that's bad.
Mm-hmm. The flesh.
It's been called so many things.
Like you said, sin.
It's sin.
Yep,
it's
you
bad.
said that earlier.
It's
I'll have to share.
Flesh. It's, whatever, but we judge it as bad. And so we almost disconnect ourselves from our humanity, and we're trying to will ourselves to be some idea of whatever our idea of perfection is, whether we find that in the Bible or whether we're raised a certain way or whatever. We're looking for this way that we're supposed to live.
Yeah.
And we're judging ourselves. And it's all what's so interesting. It was very interesting to me to learn about the role of the ego. And that's really what you're talking about and what you're talking about. Like, when we're young, we need a structure. We need a container that teaches us that I'm differentiated from you. I'm not John Walt. I'm Anne-Marie. You're John Walt. You're my mom. I'm the child. And even within a community, we're learning how to care for ourselves and all of those kinds of things. But unfortunately, in the society and in the world and the culture that we live in, the ego becomes so fortified that we believe that is ourself.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we do everything we can to protect it and strengthen it, because the ego is saying, hey, I am here to keep you safe. I'm here to keep you safe. Build me.
Yeah.
And it got us this far.
And so I think that's the importance of understanding the human journey. Is it's not bad. Jesus was human. Jesus came embodied in human form for a purpose, to show us what it looked like to live as a human, to feel everything we feel, and live in union with the Father. that was one of the most beautiful things he did, was he showed us what that thing looked like. We saw him cry, we saw him grieve, we saw him wrestle. You know, he was human, and we are human, and we're made to live in union with the Father, with someone who is larger than us.
Yeah, I think
You know?
the role in the larger, like, is a really important concept, because if you look at the way that creation is structured, it's not, in our Western world, we build everything around org charts. Like, let's say you have a business or a nonprofit, any organization in the Western world now is built around box and lines, where this is your role, and this is how you communicate with everyone else, and this is how you fit in. And we define that role's value based on its output. This is your role, this is what you do, and you're valuable because you play this role in the larger machine. When we look at nature, when we look at the way that God created things, everything is organized around DNA. And DNA is this code that's put in every living thing.
So good.
From the beginning, that says this is who you are and this is the role that you play. And everything plays that role perfectly, and that's why we find such perfect balance in nature. Like, everything that God created, there's no waste. It is perfect organizational structure. The only living organic structures that can choose not to live in alignment with their identity are humans, because we can choose to step out of it. Now, when we talk about humans, we're talking about identity that's more than just DNA here. But even on a DNA level, we can really choose not to play the role that we were designed to play. So identity can never be understood. I mean, it doesn't exist outside of relationship and connection to everything else. And so, like, we aren't an island, obviously. We're created to play our role. And so if we don't transition over, though, into this is who I am, this is what I bring to the table, and this is my role in the larger story, then we end up creating a prison for ourselves of self-focus and isolation. And tell me you don't look around and see a world filled with isolated people that don't know who they are.
And really, even in that, there's so much grace, because the fact that it leads to isolation, narcissism is one way to look at it too, where I'm more concerned about what you see than what's actually really going on. Like, I'm not integral, I'm not integrated with myself, and I'm holding up this exterior, but in here, this is going on, and I can't tell you because you might judge me, and I've already judged myself, all that. It's painful. It is isolating. It's confusing. It shuts us down, which is the call to the transformation.
Yeah.
In that very thing. So I've certainly felt all of those things. I've seen that in different seasons in my friends. And so some of you listening may be absolutely identifying with this deeper thing where you go, isn't there more than this? I do want the more. I don't want to be shut down. I don't want to feel isolated. I don't want to feel like deep down there was all this other part of me that I never got to express and share. And I think sometimes that can feel selfish to people. Again, it's a misunderstanding that when you double down on who you actually are, the depth of your authentic self, that somehow that's selfish, when really that's what allows you to participate from your DNA in the community in a way that serves. It's not selfish for you to really be who you are. And that's a big part of the One Journey, is like discovering that. We do this thing called core drivers, where we look at the core way that God made us to function. I thought of that when you said DNA.
Yeah.
And as I've watched people discover it through conversation with God, and start to own it, align with it, not shame it, not reject it.
Yeah.
It's like something unlocks and everything in their life.
It's really
I'm not going to say overnight, but it's pretty quick, actually, that things shift and change.
I mean, I'd been on this series of transformation journeys for a long time, but when I went on the One Journey, one of the things that became clear to me was that I'm a structural thinker, and that's my core flow. The way that I move through the world is structural, and that probably doesn't make sense to any of you.
After you taled about box and line thinking.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I just love the irony of that.
It is, yeah. But it's more understanding the relationship of things to other things, like ideas to other ideas. And and like what are the necessary pieces that need to be in place for something to function healthfully. And so again, it doesn't need to make sense to anyone, but to me on such a deep level, it was like, yes. So that has then bled out into every part of my life. And it was like immediately I understood why I've had all the problems I've had and why I've had all the successes I've had. Like, because
and you used to judge yourself for that.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
And struggle with other people understanding that too.
Yeah. And I wouldn't understand. I'm like, the way that I move through the world is very structural. So I'm seeing something that's not normal. Like my perspective is not normal. So when I go into conversations with people, I need to understand where I'm coming from instead of assuming that they're seeing it the way that I'm seeing it. So just to your point, like understanding these things is so freeing. The fruit it brings is huge, but also the freedom that it brings is just massive.
Yeah. The concept of humanity, I think as a child for me, and I'd like for both of you to speak to this, because I was growing up in a structured religious organization that did put the word sin on brokenness, missing the mark. And because I already just was carrying shame from all kinds of things, just pain in life, I think is very human of me. I'm not even blaming this on the religious structure, but very human of me to have this concept of myself that I'm bad and I need to I'm missing something, I'm lacking something, and I've got to figure out what I'm missing or lacking, overcompensate so that I can be good, I can get validation. Yeah. And that is like the false self-identity journey versus coming out of that into like, who am I really? And it's so far beyond this concept of like, I'm bad and I need to figure out how to get good, or even I need somebody else to make me good. Like I 1,000% have had a relationship with Jesus that has transformed my life, redeemed all the pain and the brokenness. But that's been a journey too. And I think that's a very human journey to have a spiritual relationship where you over time grow in your understanding of who you really are and your role in the world. But my question to y'all is, I'd love for you to talk about the sin thing. And I'm curious what you think on that, because also, even though no one meant for this to happen in the structure of a religious organization, that concept of sin and some of these stronger Calvinistic doctrines like absolute depravity, some of those words, God, they really stuck to the places in me that were already broken and really made me miss, I think, an invitation into like graciousness with myself and the love of God and acceptance and understanding that I'm a human just like you. And I don't actually need to figure out a way to prove that I'm perfect, you know?
Yeah. I mean, we craft identities for ourselves in the name of Jesus, in the name of Christianity that keep us from God.
Yeah,
absolutely. If that doesn't make sense right now, we'll unpack that more later. Man, this whole, we want power and control. We want certainty. We're always grasping for certainty. So you bring in this whole God question. How do I know that I'm saved? How do I know that I'm loved by God? Well, the easiest thing is to create rules and check boxes off. If you want certainty, because this whole transformation journey process, that's the only real path, by the way. I'm being a little bit facetious, but we do just create rules every time we get a chance and we check boxes off. And so this whole concept of sinner, when I understood what the real original translation of the Hebrew and Greek words for sinner in the Bible meant, it was like really revolutionary, because we have created a definition that says sinner means bad. I'm bad because I'm a sinner. What sinner really means is to stray from the path, to miss the mark. It's like, it's a very freeing concept of it. That's not quite, you could think of it almost like that's not quite it.
It's not an identifier.
It's not an identifier. And the other thing is like, we don't, just like we're saying, we don't make space for transformation. We don't make space for process. We want things to be right now. And this whole instant gratification thing that's only ramping up, it literally kills us. And so if we understand process, we make room for process and transformation, then we can accept this concept of sinner means I'm not quite on the path yet. I need to refine the path. I need to align with that path, which allows time and space for us to find it. And when we just judge it, we shut it down. And the last thing any of us really want to be is wrong. We don't want. I mean, I think it comes from a good place. Like we want to be
we
right with
avoid
God.
yeah.
So if you, and I think all of us have felt that at different times, like growing up in modern Christianity, of like, when I was young, I was like, I don't want to be wrong. I want to be right.
Certainly don't want to go to hell.
Yeah.
I didn't even care.
What's that?
Like, that wasn't even my motivator. Like, I love God, and I'm kidding. I loved God, and so I wanted to do the right thing.
Yes. And deep down, that's genuinely true.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's like the question, what do you want? One of my favorite questions, like, what do you really, really want?
Mm-hmm.
I was terrified when I first heard somebody embracing that question, because I thought, well, if you really get to the root of what humanity wants, it's bad. And where that's actually coming from is this thing that we're talking about.
Yeah.
When you actually poll people and what you ask them this one question, what do you really, really want? A lot of people, it's a very hard question. They don't know. You have to think about it. When they come back to you, listen to their answers. It's going to be beauty. It's going to be like, well, I really actually want to be a really good dad to my kids. I want to be known as a faithful community contributor. You know, like when you give people the freedom to think about what they really want at the core, to your point, like you really wanted to know God. Yeah. And I did too. It's like at the same time as this thing that I felt guilt-driven, shame-driven faith practices, there was also this deep desire for, I really want to know God. I really want to I do want to express myself and be who I am, even though I'm super shut down and afraid of people, including myself.
Yeah.
Okay, speak more to this human journey and why it matters.
This is why I love that we go back to design in the One Journey. We go back to the beginning. We go back to our inception as human beings, where God said, when he created everything, when he created, like you were talking about, everything that has DNA and the original structure of things, he said, it is good, it is good, it is good, it is good. And then he said, makes me cry, like, this is very good. When he made us.
Yeah.
Humanity.
That he made humanity, and he made us human. He knew what he was doing. He didn't make us human by mistake. He knew what he was doing, and he even made provision for us as humans from the very beginning. He knew, and he designed us. He had it all right there. This is what you're going to need.
So good.
You know? And so I love that we go back to that place, because we get to go back and go, no, he says I'm good. I'm good. Doesn't mean it doesn't mean, we think making mistakes and we think doing things that are bad make us bad.
Means something about us.
It means something. Yeah. We attach all this meaning to it, and we forget that we're good. And that's a part of missing the mark.
Yeah.
Part of missing the mark is my forgetting. One of the reasons I stray from the path is when I forget who I am. I am a human designed to live in union with God. And from that force of love, and from that design, it's when I forget that I move off the path.
Yeah. When
I don't know that. And so that's one of the things I love about this whole conversation about being human is realizing that being human is our state.
Yeah.
And we were created to live it. We were created to live as human with God.
Yeah. And I think the unsaid here is that we all struggle with it.
Yes.
We all reject our humanity in some way. Like we're all kind of almost fighting ourselves, trying to get out, trying to go like, well, if I can just hack the system, if I just figure out the way to look right to this group of people, then maybe I'll be loved and accepted. Or if I can just prove that I can make a ton of money and provide for my family, well, then maybe I will get to that place where I can accept myself and other people accept me. Like that's part of the human paradigm, is that we're all putting together some sort of formula that makes us feel good about ourselves, but it doesn't actually work. It's like, it's kind of like sugar. It's like it tastes good. It gives you a little jolt, but it doesn't actually give you the fuel you need for the long term. So it's part of being human to craft this survival strategy that makes me feel right. If I do this, then I'm okay. And if I don't do this, then I'm good and I won't be seen as bad, so that I can avoid being the thing we're most afraid to be. So for me, I know when I first started to discover this, I was most afraid of being like a high maintenance fraud. So I'm avoiding anything I can do to be high maintenance. I avoid anything I can do to appear false. So I'm obsessed with being honest, but like it's twisted because I'm like, you can be transparent without actually being honest with yourself, So I'm doing these things that sound good. Well, I need to be a leader, but a quiet leader. So, but I'm actually boxing myself in, because what if I need to be a loud leader, but my survival strategy does not allow me to be a loud leader. I need to be a quiet leader. Well, I should share my gifts, but I shouldn't be about myself. Okay, well, how am I going to share my gifts and not let anybody know my name? And this sounds like neurotic because it does get to that point, but we all do it. This is the human journey. We all craft for ourselves this idea of who we think we're supposed to be. And we try it on for size, and it helps us succeed and get acceptance by some groups, rejection by other groups, and we kind of find our people. But the thing is that it breaks down, because it will actually kill us in the end. Because we are so tired of trying to be who we think you think I'm supposed to be, and who I think I'm supposed to be, whoever God wants me to be, that we have actually abandoned these things that God put in us from the beginning that are who we really are. And so it is this idea of like the transformation of the caterpillar to the butterfly. Like, I've got to go in the cocoon, die, and see what resurrects. And I think that we're so passionate about sharing this conversation because I think I've come to the conversation pretty late in life. I'm early compared to a lot of my friends. I'm in my midlife, but I think this is actually a developmental stage that's supposed to take place pretty early on, before parenthood, in that kind of becoming a man, becoming a woman, becoming who I am in the world season. But none of us have had much help with it. Like, we haven't had guides that have modeled it. We haven't really understood how maturity and transformation work in a way that actually works for us. So I want to give us a really simple practice, and then we'll keep having the conversation. And this practice comes from understanding what maturity looks like for the different stages. So there's like the infant stage of maturity. That means when you're born to the time you're 3, there's really one thing that's happening for you, and it's that you are being returned to a place of peace and joy and love. And joy meaning somebody cares about me, I belong, I'm a human who is accepted in a world, in a family, and in this home. And I'm safe, I'm going to get my needs met. So I'm hungry, I cry, I'm returned to a place of, peace because I got food. I'm cold, somebody noticed, they put socks on my feet. I'm tired, somebody put me down. And ideally, every human is born into a family with a capacity to care for us and show us for 3 years, just that we're loved and we're accepted in the world. And I promise you, the people that get that actually struggle less with being a human, because for 3 years, they were just loved. They were accepted and they had a home. Now, we all have gaps in our maturity, but some of us who are really struggle as adults, had major gaps there. Imagine not getting care, not being touched, not being, smiled at and laughed at, not getting your basic needs of hunger, warmth, shelter met. I promise you, it's not going to make sense to you why you're struggling later, but you're really going to struggle as a human. So it's like there's this spectrum where we all have gaps, we all have issues, we all need transformation, we all need to come out of the false and into the true, and that's just part of it, and it's a good part of life. This is life, and we need to accept that. And then there's this understanding that we need to have of some of us have had such hard things happen to us in our life that we really need acceptance, love, and a community that can care for us for a while before we can even come into a place where we can practice what I'm about to say. So this next practice comes to us from understanding what we grow into from ages 3 to 13. And that is more of that selfish time. And I don't mean it negatively. It's a great selfish time. It's a time where I need to learn to care for self. where I have my mom and my dad and my family, my community to help support me, but I'm learning how to meet my own needs. I'm learning how to cook for myself and clean up my room and take care of my body. And I must be selfish, because if I'm trying to be selfless at this stage, something's off.
Yeah.
I'm parenting my parents. I have shame driving me to try to please you. So I abandon myself. I did that one. But ideally, again, nothing's ideal. But what happens here is we learn to be a responsible person, taking care of ourselves. One of the key things that people learn during that 10-year period is how to express what they think, feel, need, and want. When I first learned that I was supposed to have learned that in that 10 years, I was shocked because I definitely thought I was never supposed to express what I feel. Not many, or if I did, I needed to apologize and get my shit together really soon. What I want and need, I really thought was superfluous. And so I doubled down on what I think. I can share what I think and maybe a little of what I need if I really need it with respect. So we're just going to practice checking in with where you are today and what you think, what you feel, what you need, what you want. And it can be about anything. So all you're going to do is take a minute. You can talk into your phone or get a piece of paper, but I'm going to give you 4 prompts. I just gave them to you, and you're just going to fill in the blank, and you can't do it wrong. The main thing is to be honest. This is just for you. And don't negate anything. If your need is very simple and maybe feels silly, but it popped up as a need, just write it down. It's okay. So where your prompts are, I think, fill in the blank. I feel, fill in the blank. I need, fill in the blank. And I want. And just you getting aware of those things for yourself right now is actually healing for your brain. And if you grew up in America, I promise you even have some gaps here just because we kind of have this society that we think we're not supposed to be dependent on each other. We're not really supposed to express how we feel very loudly. And so we all need to practice these things. Just you acknowledging them today is actually building good neural networks in your brain. So take a minute and fill those in, and then we're going to do the next part of this practice and talk about it.
And this is anything we think.
Anything.
Okay.
Yeah. Whatever.
Yeah, this is like, it doesn't need to be right or wrong. You don't even have to share it. It's just get your thoughts on paper. Okay, you may want to press pause if you want to take a little longer. And ours will be short, obviously, because we're doing this, but. Okay, the first thing you're going to do is not judge these things. Or if you see yourself starting to judge them, just stop. Because one of the things about being a human is that it's really tempting for us to judge. We all do it. Every single one of us judges ourselves, each other, the world around us. But a huge piece of transforming is letting ourselves not have to judge so much. So don't judge it. One of the big things about being a human is actually feeling. So in the feeling space that you might not have words, you may need to look up a feeling chart just to help you find words, or you may just want to notice like sensations in your body. If you notice tension in your neck, like I often have, maybe you just feel that for a minute without judging it, without even going, well, I shouldn't feel tension. Just notice it. Notice my hips feel a little tight. Okay, what does that feel like? Interesting. So just becoming aware on some of these. Now we're going to do the next step. Are y'all done? Both of you? Okay. Now we're just going to practice that space of connection. And that space is built in. You can hear the Spirit of God's voice in the same space that you already think, because the dominant voices there are actually the voice of the one who made you and your own voice. Sometimes they get really smushed down by all the pain of life and other people's voices that we've given validity to, but your voice is found there, your authentic voice, and God's voice. So that's the space where we have dialogue with God. So your voice, I'm going to just give you a model so it's super simple and you don't have to overthink it. Anybody can do this. Doesn't matter what you think about God. You say your voice as you just wrote it. Like, I think I enjoy doing this podcast. Then I'm going to turn my attention to Jesus as if he's really in the room. Like if I was talking to Anne-Marie, I'd go, what do you think? But I'm going to do it in conversation with God. So I'm going to go, God, I think this. What do you think? And then you're just going to notice what comes to your mind. And it's not going to sound like a booming man's voice, because the still small voice of God sounds like the way you already think and the way you already process. It's going to sound like your thoughts. But you're going to notice it and see if it seems like it's coming from a place of love. If it's not, chunk it. If it is, just keep going with it. So I'm going to pray it for y'all. And I say that in quotes because I'm not talking about having a one-way conversation prayer with God. I'm talking about let's have a dialogue with that place where we're all already connected to God. So in your mind, say, I think, and read what you wrote. And then I'm going to say, God, what do you think? What do you want me to know from your heart to mine? And just notice what comes up. Write it down, capture it somehow. Okay, I'm going to move on to feel. Ready? Your voice in the conversation is what you already wrote down. So I feel, fill in the blank that you already wrote. Now I'm going to help you turn your conversation to that dialogue space with God. God, what do you want me to know about how I feel? For some of us, you may need to say, God, help me feel. Teach me how I feel. And notice what comes to mind. Moving on to the next one. Your voice in the conversation. Again, we're just practicing connective dialogue. I need, and you already wrote it out, say that. Jesus, what do you know that I don't yet know about what I need? Notice what you notice about what comes to mind immediately. Again, feel free to pause this if you want more space and time. And the last one was want. So your part of the conversation is read your statement, I want blank. And now listen to what comes after I ask this question. God, what do you want me to know about my wants, what I want? Okay, how'd that go for you guys? And is there a part of it you want to share?
I always love doing these just for that very reason when you talk about gaps and I realize that I haven't always been able to identify what I need. I can usually say how I feel and what I think. But what I need and what I want have been harder for me to articulate and identify. So I always love doing this because it's good for me. It's good for me to practice. I'm happy to share, whatever about it. But what made me happy was kind of around you. I'm thinking that having this conversation is really fun. And he said, because I designed you to love this. Mm. And so a lot of that was around that. The funny one was I said, I need caffeine. And he said, you actually need a nap.
The opposite.
The opposite. Like, I need caffeine.
Both sound good. I'll share mine, just one piece of it. I said I want good things. And to me, that meant a lot of things. It was like a lot of things popping in my mind. And this is certainly one I've judged myself in the past for, like, my desires are bad. I think that's a lie my mind toyed around with for decades. And so when I asked God, I felt like what came up immediately was, you really want really good things. And it just felt deep, like God, and I say he by default. I 1,000% believe God is female and male. I just have to say that because I think it's really important.
I'm glad you did.
God, the sense of like, it's really good what you want, and you really want them, and that's really good too.
Mm-hmm.
What about you?
I don't have anything I'm dying to share right now.
Okay, no
It
problem.
was great. It was,
Yeah.
Well, and I'm glad you actually said that because in our calls where we practice, this is so normal. You're welcome to share. You don't have to share. It's just what you want to do.
And one thing we've talked about many times is like the way that we all show up differently in groups with hearing God is different. Like
Yeah,
I'm definitely not someone who like is just wanting to share everything God says to me. A lot of times what I feel like he says to me, I need to go ponder. We were, in the first episode we were talking about that bundle of bananas, and like it's fun to share. It's kind of vulnerable for me, but it's so cool because like after we got off, we were just talking more about it, and I was like, oh my gosh, like that is really meaningful to me. But a lot of times, where God takes me, just I need some time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
this was super fast.
Yeah.
I like to go fast, but this is super fast for me because we're recording for y'all.
So you're like,
We need to
"Great."
press pause. I don't know. I practice a lot. That's what I can say I do.
Yeah.
Okay. The human journey, one of the things that I want to talk more about is this journey of embracing what it is to have feelings, thoughts, needs, and desires. And it does feel vulnerable. Because I think a big thing that we run from is anything that could make us seem insecure because of the survival thing. It's like, I can't be vulnerable because you could kill me or you could use this against me. And that's not real for this situation. But from a human perspective around survival, that was a very real thing that's like wired into our DNA. So talk a little bit about survival. I'm curious how you see it and how that relates to what it is to be a human, and that everybody has this thing that we experience called humanity.
I call it the animal brain. I don't know if that's helpful for anyone else, but if you look around at like the way that animals' brains work, it's all about like self-focus, self-protection, getting their needs met, all that stuff. So I think we have that too in us. It's the whole fight or flight thing, like
Right. It's not bad. It's developmental.
It's not bad. Yeah. Like it actually, it's interesting. Somebody was saying the other day, like, I think it was you, was it that, when you don't have any feeling, like it's actually really sad, like
when I met somebody who did not have pain receptors.
Yeah.
And it was the most tragic child I've ever met because she's just constantly getting hurt.
Yeah.
She doesn't know that something's cutting her open. She doesn't know that her finger's caught in the door.
Yeah. And so like, it's actually really good that we have these tools to help us navigate this world. It's good that we can recognize danger. It's good that we want to protect ourselves and all that stuff. There's this whole other component where it's like, we are social, like we are made to be in community with other people. And and part of that is that once we have our foundational needs met, like, food, shelter, water, we start to focus on our position in the social hierarchy, which I know a lot of this conversation can sound like it's like not God-centric, but I think it's more just trying to understand what have we learned about how our brains function from like a science perspective that can help us understand how we can navigate where we are, like how our brains have gotten to where we are right now and how we can navigate this journey of transformation with God. So I feel like the real issue is like we get so focused on protecting ourselves, and once that protection moves from physical to our role in this community and the social hierarchy, it just damages us in a huge way because it cuts off real relationship, and it starts to just build competition and isolation and all that. I think like the core desire that everyone has is freedom, and I can see that clearly in like every religion that I've studied. Like every major religion in the world is offering a path out of yourself, the prison of self, to freedom. And like we're all desperate for freedom.
Yeah. I think that can sound confusing, and it's why we've chosen to use the word, the journey we're on together is out of false self and into authentic self. And then also it can sound confusing from a religious perspective. We go, self is bad, flesh is bad. So I think But I love the way you're talking about it, because it's like, really, it's out of only self too, like being stuck in survival and protection of just self. And that self isn't even representative of one that's gone on a journey to really discover a full sense of self. So I do, again, I come back to this is so all about maturity and how we relate to each other in community. And those are just places that a lot of us have gaps, and it's a real thing. And I think that's a really important part of this, is to understand we all have gaps. We all struggle to be vulnerable and find people that we trust enough to be vulnerable with, to be a human. This is really how I feel, and I'm not ashamed of it. I mean, a minute ago, I got teary about something that I've been going through. And even with you two, who I trust so much, I have to remind myself I am safe to feel around you both.
Mm-hmm.
And if I lean into that, I can actually get healing, because I can receive your love. But if I'm not willing to tell you, how am I going to get to the love that I need that's going to heal me? So, but that's so human. I mean, we want to seem like we've got it all together and we figured it out, and we said this last time, and you say this in one of your notes, nobody knows what they're doing and nobody's figured it out, the answers.
Yeah.
And that's what it is to be human too.
Yeah.
Like, this is normal. Nobody else has got it all figured out.
Which is crazy. It's like our obsession with certainty, because we think certainty is going to make us safe.
Yeah.
You know, we have to have it figured out. We need to be certain. Where the freedom for me, and I may have said this before, that it's in allowing the questions. When I finally figured out it was okay to question things, it's okay to have questions. I can question this. It was the questions that opened up the more for me. It opened up the path to more freedom and more connection with God, rather than needing, because certainty locks things down.
Yeah.
You know, versus opening things up. And so, yeah, it's like we think we're supposed to have it right. We think we're supposed to have all the answers.
We're told that.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
Yeah, it's true.
True.
Consciously and subconsciously, like everywhere we go, the message that's being preached to us is have it all together.
Mm-hmm. And if you don't figure it out,
Yeah. I mean, one of the things,
there's a right answer.
yeah, this whole conversation of like, nobody knows what they're doing. One of my mentors, when I sat with him, one of the first times years ago, he super successful business guy. And he goes, I've never known what I'm doing. Nobody knows what they're doing. And I was like, what? Like, that is so antithetical to everything I've ever been taught. Like, how can you be successful if you don't know what you're doing? And what he opened my eyes to over, it took me years to really understand this, was accepting that he never knew what he was doing was what made him successful, because he walked into every situation and said, what do I need to know? And what do we think is the right way to go? And how do we test that? Because we're not going to assume that we're right. And another part of this whole dying concept is like letting go of the need to be our own protector.
Yeah.
And
that's a big one.
That allows us to actually have the freedom to, like, in business, experiment and try things, but also in life and in our relationship with God. Like, these conversations we're having where we ask God questions, it's like so many people don't do that because they're afraid of getting it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like,
They will be the one person that doesn't hear God, which isn't real. Everybody can, but everybody's afraid they're the one that's not going to work for.
Or if they think they hear God, then what if it turns out to be wrong?
Right.
And it's like we have so much fear, but really that fear at the heart of it is us trying to hold on to some level of certainty that we're okay.
Yeah.
We all want to feel okay. Part of what we're talking about here is accepting that the only way to be okay is to let go, not to hold on tight.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that you just said self-protection, because I think I haven't had an understanding of how I've self-protected until this season of my life. Like in counseling, that's been a key word. Like, this is how you self-protected. And I'm like, I mean, that has been the dying, because it's so normal. It's like the air I breathe to do that. And so to consciously become aware of it and go, I'm not going to do that anymore. Or there I go again. I don't need to do it. To actually do it does feel like a death. And so I think also part of the human journey is that sometimes we just shut down and won't do it because we don't feel safe enough. I don't know how anybody feels safe enough unless you actually have loving community around you, people that you can walk with. And I think it's one reason a lot of people never actually feel like they did fully become who they are in life, because they never felt safe enough. And then when we are in those moments that life invites us to lay down our self-protection, our control, to not know and into uncertainty, we either do it and we transform, or we double down on our old strategy. We won't do it. We won't open up. And we just go for another round of getting as far as we can go with our formula and what we know. But the cost of that is in the territory of what we really, really want. It's by doubling down on what we know and not entering into the unknown, not dying, we lose self-expression, love, relationship. We lose like the ear to that deeper voice of intuition in us that says, there's more. There's just, it comes at a really high cost to double down on needing to be right. And I think that's why this conversation is super important to me. And the invitation into the One Journey, why we've created the One Journey, is so important, because yes, you're maturing and transforming, but there is an element of invitation into something more that will allow you to really become who you are. Or you can double down, and it gets harder and harder to let go of the old. The more you practice the old and how much it self-protects you, the more it's going to feel vulnerable to let it go. So it's harder to let go of your self-protections at 80 than it was at 20. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean that you can't at any moment, but you need to understand, if you've been doing the same pattern for 80 years and it made you feel okay, but it also cost you something, it's going to feel like death to let it go. But there is life on the other side of it. And if you're 20 and you can look at these things, all the more power to you. Do it.
Yeah. I mean, statistically speaking, it usually happens in the second half of life. Most people don't reach the place where they begin to let go of these things until they reach the second half of life. And even then, one statistic I've heard is that 70% of people will not go through the journey to actually let go. They double down. And so that's one of the reasons I love having these conversations, because it invites people into a transformation journey that actually is available to them and possible.
Mm-hmm. So it's so interesting, because I think the reason it takes a while to happen is you talk a lot about winning strategy, like our winning strategy, which is basically however we are approaching life that we think is going to work for us. It really breaks down in the midlife, it's hard. It's very hard for it to survive.
And it's a good thing that it is.
It's a great thing.
It's not a crisis. It's a good thing.
Yeah, it's a blessing. But we've all talked to people in that stage of life that are highly successful and miserable. Mm-hmm. And we've all talked to people at that stage of life who are very unsuccessful and miserable. And I want you guys to think about it, if you join me in it for a second and just thinking about this, like, who have you met and known that truly live from their true identity? Is that, I think, like, when I pull up the pictures in my mind, there's not a lot of them, but it's such a powerful image. Mm-hmm. Like, and it impacts me and it impacts everyone else that they touch. Like, there's something about how they live. And so when we talk about younger people, like, one of the things that I'm so passionate about is inviting people to recognize the importance of this journey before they need the total life breakdown. Mm-hmm. Like, because if you look, that's why I go talk about other religions. Like, throughout history and in every wisdom writing, there is this deep understanding that we need freedom and we need to be transformed. And they talk about it all differently, but there's a deep understanding. If we can just accept that and not fight against it and make space for it and pursue it, that's such a gift.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really is. And I know Richard Rohr has that book on the two halves of life.
So good.
It's really helpful for understanding this. And I think what you just said is super important too. I think the more we can educate our kids on these things and give them those tools, like we were just talking about, a kid who can learn to express what they think, feel, need, and want in a life-giving way for them and their community, is so much more ahead of the game because our boxes and our false self don't operate from the paradigm of desire. It's all the should realm. It's I should do this so that I can be okay there. And a lot of people build their whole lives around that. And that really breaks down in the second half of life, and you either double down on it or you transform. But when we give our families and our communities a little leg up and give them a taste of healthy, desire-driven behavior, which is who are you and what do you really, really want? You're accepted here. You can feel what you feel. You can say what you need to say. And we can learn to do that in a healthy, life-giving way. Now, all of a sudden, we're being driven by these things that God put in us. And we referenced core drivers earlier. Those things are put in us as the path forward for us to become our authentic self. But if we don't have anyone to help us figure that out, we can feel really, really lost. We at One want to do our part to provide resources to figure out what are the questions that God actually put in you when he made you that will bring you back to the path. One of the things we talk about, and I almost said it earlier when you were talking, is God has put a core question in each one of us. And I like to think of it like it's like your built-in rabbinical model. And by rabbinical, I just mean a rabbi. Jesus was a rabbi. And the main way that rabbis taught in Jesus's day was through questions. And the main way that students grew was through not dismissing the question, but asking hard questions. Then it wasn't about the answer. It really was about the conversation, the actions, the wrestling with the question. And so like in 2,000 years ago in a Jewish community on the side of the Sea of Galilee, questions were honored. Doubt wasn't doubt. It was seen as faith because you're expressing a genuine question. And so to not shut down our doubts, to not shut down our fears and our questions, and then to look at, well, what's the core question that's been driving my life? And it's actually been used to rabbi or to teach me or to disciple me. And some people would use that language. You can find it. Even if you're not aware of it, you can actually discover your core question. Mine is, what is beauty? And that question keeps me in the most broad sense of it. It's not keeping me limited to, well, I should be a certain way. What it does actually is when I will return to that question, what is beauty? It sets my feet back on the path. And it helps me remember who I really, really am. So that's part of the One Journey, is that we discover our core drivers, and we'll do a whole section on core drivers, but it's one of the things I love about the framework of the One Journey. Okay, we're going to wrap it up, but I want to know if there anything unsaid, anything that you want to say, and send us your questions. I think this podcast is going to be really, really oriented around questions. How do we honor them? How do we sit in them in a way that grows us, that takes us forward on that transformation journey? And then how do we ask good questions of God in a way not to get the right answers so we're good and accepted? We are accepted and good. In a way that we get to grow in relationship, in a way that we get to become who we really are and understand who God is and understand like the world around us. I think that's the whole point.
Yeah.
I think it's really fun, like going back and reading the gospel through the lens of this conversation, the way we're having it right now, because you start, and it also going back and looking at some of the original translations of the Greek and Hebrew. It's amazing. As I've done that over the years, it's just like, oh, wow. I have missed so much of what Jesus was actually saying, actually inviting me into. And because some of what we're talking about could sound like something maybe you've never heard before, or, kind of off the wall. And it's like, we've all heard it. We just didn't know what we were hearing.
That's so true.
Even if you weren't in the Christian space, this is talked about everywhere.
Yeah.
Psychology is always talking about how do you get out of the way of the ego.
Yeah.
If you look at Stoicism, Stoicism is saying, how do you overcome the self-sabotage of the ego to get free of it, but what it can't offer and what none of them can offer except the invitation that Jesus gives us is the true identity, the life.
Yeah, it's really good. That's a good point. I've actually loved that, like going back and listening to some of Jesus's questions and some of the things he was saying. I'm like, oh, that's what he was talking about. It wasn't what I thought on the surface, Yeah. And then I go back within this context, and it's like, he's really deep.
Yeah.
Yes. smart. You guys are real
He's
smart.
really smart. And
He
he's
was
really
the best rabbi.
Yeah.
I mean, amazing.
Yeah.
I think this too is so there in Genesis 1. This is the last thing I'll say, but regardless of what you think about how the world was created or what our role in it is Genesis 1, 2, and 3 is a Jewish, document, poem, story, record. And I'm not saying poem to make it lighter. It's just the form of literature that it takes. That no doubt is about what is it to be a human made by a God in this world? And that question itself, if we can just sit in that question, it's such a great one. It's not, was it literally made in 7 days? Okay, maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But if we're so obsessed with that, maybe we're missing the bigger invitation into what is it to be a human in the world made by God? That's a really big question, a really good one, and a definitely important one on your journey. So thanks for being with us. Thanks, y'all. And we'll see you next time.